Hey there. Last week we talked about the five. Let me get it in camera. The 5 steps to stress less. This week we're going to continue that momentum inside of Stress Talk Live in just a moment. Hey there. I hope everyone is doing well today. I think part of the country is in a deep freeze. Even as far south as I am, it has been cold. I mean, cold for us. I mean, when you get into the 20s and the 30s, that's pretty cold for Southeast Georgia. We have to start bringing the animals in and covering all of our crops because we don't want anything to freeze. So I hope you're staying in and staying warm, staying safe. Oh, yes, staying safe. So today, what are we going to talk about? We are going to talk about 5 steps to stress less. Remember, we started it last week. We started talking about we got through 2 of the steps where we're going to try to forge ahead and talk about the other remaining steps. Before I get into that, of course, as a reminder, I'm going to ask you to please follow me on Instagram and on Facebook and Twitter at mlbaileyconsultants. I love it that you like my page, my ML Bailey page, or the page that I have that's dedicated for social workers or to social workers, the Real Social Workers online magazine page. I want you to follow it because when you follow that page, not only will you get updates as to what I'm doing, what I'm talking about, you also help me because of the algorithm that these two social media platforms use. It is helpful to me that you follow as well as like, because when you follow, it makes what I'm doing available to many more people. The other thing, please subscribe to the ML Bailey Consultants channel on YouTube. I got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff. So subscribe to the ML Bailey channel on YouTube as well. Don't forget the forrealsocialworkers.com ReU shop. That stands for renew, refresh, regenerate, all of those re's that make us feel good shop. I have a number of things on there that you may be interested in, and I'm adding more. So please take a look at the shop. Continue to look back. I will always, when I add new items, new experiences, I will always let you know about that. And then if you forget all of this that I'm saying, you could always go to mlbaileyconsultants.com, which is my primary website, and it gives you links to to my blogs, to my podcast, to the reuse shop, everything that you need to stress less, to get a handle on your stress levels and to stress less. So let's get back to what we've been talking about. We've been talking about the 5 steps to stress less. And I'm just going to take myself off camera if you don't mind. Feel free to leave comments or questions in the section, the area to do so. I'm live using StreamYard. So if you've not given Facebook permission to use your name and your image, please do that. I want to acknowledge you. Um, so it would be helpful if you would give them permission. And I've put the link I believe I put the link in the announcement. So let's go there we go. And let's start talking about, let's do a quick review. Okay, and I'm going to take that banner off so you can actually see the entire slide there we go, because it's covering that. So we don't want it to cover. Okay, so we're talking about 5 steps to stress less. And as you will recall, I said last week that I was going to take my time. I didn't want to rush as I was doing this, because I think this is information that can be helpful to you. It is helpful to me. Part of the reason that I am doing this is because I've gone through these things myself. I had to figure out how I could shake off some of this overwhelming stress. And it was because I couldn't just I would do the short term, the activities that I found like on the internet that I read about, and it would relieve stress for a little while, but then it would come back. And what I recognized is that there are different levels of stress, there are different types of stress, there are different levels of stress, and different degrees of stress. And I had to find the things that caused me great amounts of stress, as well as the little things that cause stress to build and build and build and compound. So it was important for me personally to kind of figure all of this out. And so these are the things that I'm sharing with you. I want you to have a better grasp of the things that, first, what stress is, second, what causes you to experience the stress response. What are those triggers? How do you view those triggers? And then for you to be able to come up with a strategy to address that. And of course, I'm here to help you. Um, if some of us can do those things on our own, we can figure it out, but sometimes we need help to figure it out. So that's why I am here. Okay, so let's do a quick review. The first step that we talked about last week was understanding stress, looking at stress and understanding what stress really is. Well, one of the things that I shared is that stress is a physical response. That's very important, because if we understand that stress is a physical response, we understand that we can actually pay attention to our bodies and have um, and recognize when we are feeling the stress response, when we're experiencing it, and the level at which we are experiencing it. I also shared that stress can be beneficial or harmful. It can motivate us, right? Stress is what gets us up in the morning. It gets us up and gets us moving. It's what causes us to want to do well when we're at work, or do well when we're in our homes. We want things to be a certain way. It can be motivating. Also, it can be experienced as boredom. When people are bored, they may have little direction, they may have little motivation to do things. And I think I use the term couch potato. I also reference teenagers who may sit around and say, I'm bored, there's nothing to do. um, my teenagers, when they were teenagers, sometimes we heard that it's boring, there's nothing to do. And I'd look around and say, well, there's plenty to do. The other thing about stress is that Perception matters. How we think is going to direct how um, how the stress response is perceived. As an example, let's say you walk into a room and everyone yells, "Surprise!" And you see all of your friends and your family, and they're wishing you a happy birthday. They are there to greet you and to spend time with you and to celebrate who you are, celebrate your life. Well, that surprise is going to cause your heart to beat faster and harder. It's going to cause you to, your muscles to tighten. You're going to be stunned. That is an example of the stress response. But your perception of that is that that's wonderful. You enjoy it. So it's going to be a wonderful thing, right? Let's go to another example. Let's say that you're called into your boss's office. Your boss or your supervisor says, "I need you to come into my office, and I need you to come in right now." Your heart is going to start beating faster and harder. Your blood pressure is going to go up. Your muscles are going to tense, and you're going to wonder, why is my supervisor calling me into the office? What have I done? What happened? What's the deal? Right? So you may perceive being called into the office as negative. Now, when you get there, your boss may say, "I just want to tell you that you're getting a raise." Wouldn't we all love that if our bosses told us we were getting a raise? But that initial thought is that something might be wrong because of the tone or because of the perception. So perception matters when we are talking about stress and the stress response. We then talked about triggers and talked about what things contribute or cause um, triggers. What stresses us? We talked about the mind and how our beliefs, our values, our thoughts, as well as our expectations can contribute to the stress response. We talked about our bodies and how illness, exercise, whether we are exercising or whether we are not exercising, can contribute to the stress response. We also talked about life stages. Going into puberty or into menopause can contribute to the stress response. We talked about relationships, and we talked about relationships with family and friends, with colleagues, and how our perceptions and expectations all influence those relationships. And we talked about how those relationships can contribute to our stress, right? We've just talked about our job. We've talked about the environment. And when I talked about the environment, I talked about the noise levels. I talked about pollution. I talked about traffic. I talked about weather. I talked about how our environment can affect us and how it can contribute to increased stress or it can contribute to lower stress. Hey, Allison, it's good to see you. Yeah, you're right. We can all have multiple stressors at one time. And I'm glad you brought that up because we don't always recognize when we're stressed. We don't always recognize that um, that stress can compound. I talk about sometimes the aggravating little things in life that cause and contribute to our stress levels. Like, for example, um, the other day, I woke up late. I overslept, and my immediate thought was I was going to be late for work. So that was a stressor because I woke up late. Then I realized I had to make sure that I had lunch because I wasn't going to be able to leave work at lunchtime to get lunch. So that was another stressor. Then I realized that I had a meeting. So that was another stressor. So all of these things were contributing to my stress level going up and remaining high through the morning. So stress is real interesting in that it doesn't just turn on and turn off. We can get little hits, little triggers that can cause it to rev up and come back, rev up and come back, or we can have something a little more intense where it'll rev up and stay up for an extended period of time, or we can have both of those things at the same time. So, yes, we can experience multiple stressors at the same time. That's why it is so important for us to be aware, to use our awareness, and to notice when we are experiencing the stress response. Thanks for that comment, Allison, because that is very important. So let's talk about the patterns, and that's part of what where we were going with Allison's comment. It's important to recognize the patterns of how of your stress, of the triggers, as well as your responses. So let's talk about the patterns that can affect our stress response. First of all, one pattern is, do we respond or do we react? And I use those terms to mean that when we react, we are going by our we're going by intuition. We're going by habit. We are moving, I should say, by habit. We're moving with intuition. We are not looking at all of the information. We are just reacting. When we respond, we are actually considering all of the information that we have, and we act accordingly. So, the things that will affect whether we respond or react are, are below. I want to talk about responding and reacting a little bit more with an example. Um, let's say that you hear a crash outside. Um, like a now when cars hit each other, it's like a screech and a crunch, right? And you hear that, and that sound is on your street where your child plays. Chances are you are going to react to that sound. You're not going to think, you're not going to think, you're just going to move. You're going to run outside to make sure that your child or the children that your child's playing with are safe. Now, let's say that that same crunching sound, as if there was a car accident, occurred outside the building where you work. You're probably, if you hear that, you're probably going to go to someone and say, "What was that? What was that? Did you hear that sound? Well, let me just look out the window and see what that was." You're going to gather information. So that would be a response. So, what affects whether we respond or react? First of all, our core beliefs. Now, I talk about core beliefs a great deal because core beliefs are those things that we grow to believe based on our experiences from the time we were born. Our core beliefs um, really affect how we interact with the world, how we respond to the world around us, as well as how we react to the world around us. Our core beliefs lead us to have automatic thoughts. Now, automatic thoughts are those thoughts that are, just as it says, automatic. They occur oftentimes so quickly that we don't have time to think. We just take action. Now, let's see. Let me try to give you an example of an automatic thought. An automatic thought would be, let's see, let me think. Okay, so let's say there's a hot stove. The stove is on, and you're about to touch the stove, but you feel the heat before you touch the stove. You remove your hand. Now, you remove your hand before you touch the stove because you feel the heat, and your brain sent a message basically saying if you touch that, you're going to burn yourself, right? You may not have consciously thought, if I touch that, I'm going to burn myself. You just knew to remove your hand. That would be because you had an automatic thought. So, your core beliefs, the beliefs that you grew to have because of your experiences growing up, cause you to have automatic thoughts, which also cause you to talk to yourself in a certain way. Now, these are, when we talk about core beliefs, automatic thoughts, and self talk, we are really using terms that cognitive behavioral therapists use all the time. We do. We use it when we're doing therapy, when we're conducting therapy, when we're talking to people that we see. Because what we find is that when we're thinking something and we begin to tell ourselves that same thing over and over and over and over again, we believe it. So, and a lot of that again is born out of our core beliefs. So, our core beliefs, our automatic thoughts, and our self talk determine whether we're going to respond using the information that we've gathered or we're going to react when we take action without thinking. The other pattern that will affect our stress response is our health. And when I'm talking about our health, I'm talking about our eating patterns. Um, what we eat, how we eat, when we eat, where we eat. There is such a thing called mindful eating. And with mindful eating, with mindfulness is basically paying attention on purpose in a certain way in the present moment. So many of us have learned because of fast food, get it on the fly, get it quickly, to eat fast, eat quickly. We don't give ourselves an opportunity to enjoy our food. Europeans have that down pat. The meal, eating is one thing, but the meal is an experience where you get to interact with others and enjoy others' company. So they don't rush when they eat. We eat in our cars. We eat while we're driving from one location to the other. We are scarfing down McDonald's French fries. I mean, raise your hand or post in the comment if you have eaten a bag of McDonald's fries and reached in and you said, wait, where did they all go? I'm one of those. I've definitely done that. I've eaten them back to back to back, and I've eaten them all up before I realized it. So our eating pattern is very important. Um, our physical activity, you know, we we're just not very physical people anymore. We're not physical, and our bodies were made to be physical. Walking, um, getting up and moving helps us. Hey, Alice. Yeah, how about that popcorn I just ate? I know, right? At least you're getting some low calorie carbs. I'm glad you're here. Glad to see you, Alice. But our health, just getting up and moving, getting up and not sitting in the same position for an extended period of time can all affect how our stress response works. Also, do we take time out? We're good to put kids in time out, when they feel control or we perceive that they're out of control. But what about ourselves? What about ourselves? Do we actually take the time to remove ourselves from those stressful situations and take time out where we can work on breathing, when we can say some affirmations, some motivating statements to ourselves? Do we remove ourselves like that, or do we just stay in the moment? Other things are our expectations, which are born out of our unresolved emotions and feelings. Remember, we talked about how expectations in relationships can also affect our stress levels. I listened to our daughters talk about some of their friends who get upset when their boyfriends don't buy them things for Valentine's Day. And Valentine's Day is coming up, right? Sometimes women get very upset when their partner or spouse or their boyfriends don't don't show appreciation by buying them things or taking them out. So those expectations that we have can cause our stress response to increase. The other thing is, do we feel safe, stable, and secure? This is very, very key to the stress response. How so? If we're afraid, it's going to trigger the stress response. If we don't feel as if we're stable, if we feel as if our world is going to cave in or things are not stable for us, that we may lose our job, or um, our department is revamping, or the company is reorganizing, we may not feel stable in our positions, and therefore we don't feel secure, which will cause our stress levels to go up. If you talk to people whose workplace is in flux, they will often tell you that they are stressed out because they don't know what's coming next. They don't know what to expect. Alice said, and I'm like that when eating lunch at my desk, the downfall of working at home. Yeah, going back to eating, you know, I do that. I do the same thing whenever I'm working. I'm working through lunch. How many of us do that? Raise your hands. I work through lunch sometimes. And so I'm eating at my desk. I'm working on the computer. I'm answering the phone. And I'm just, swallowing my food. I'm not really enjoying my food. It's really something to think about, because it all adds to the stress on our physical bodies, as well as the mental stress that we experience. And yeah, I think I'm going to go for a walk too when I'm done with this. I think I will. So we need to recognize those patterns that cause the stress response to initiate. Again, do we respond or react to situations? Do we do we need to look at our health? Um, I made for the first time a vegetable chili today, and that's a big deal for my family. We are meat eaters, but we are trying to change our patterns, our eating habits. And so I made a vegetable chili today, and it was so good. Um, Even my husband said it was good. He loved it. So I mean, making small changes like that can impact us on a major scale. The other thing is our expectations of how people should treat us, our expectations of how we should be, how our interaction should go, can also increase our stress levels or initiate the stress response. And then just basic safety. Do we feel safe, stable, and secure? Now, the other thing about being safe, stable, and secure is it real or imagined? Am I safe because I am really safe? Or is that just my imagination? Do I just perceive that I'm safe? Do I feel stable because I am really stable? Or am I feeling instability? Is that just a perception? Is that my imagination? We always need to question, is it just in my mind or is it real? Is it real or is it Memorex? um, Especially when it comes to safety, stability, and security. Is it real or is it just a perception? Because if it is a perception, then we can always, if we feel unstable or if we feel that we're not safe or if we feel that we're not secure, if we just feel it, we need to look at what is actually in place so that we can cognitively recognize the safeguards that are in place that will keep us safe, stable, and secure. So these are the patterns that we need to look at and recognize. And once again, I'm out of time. I hate this. I don't hate it. I shouldn't say that. I know it's just taking us a long time to get through this particular this particular talk, but I want to make sure that it's very clear that there are the 5 steps that we are dealing with are very important, because we're not just talking about short-term stress relief. We are talking about long-term stress relief. We're talking about establishing patterns and habits that will enable us to experience the stress response, understanding what it is, understanding what our triggers are, understanding and recognizing the patterns that we have so that we can change it so that it is better for our health. And that's why I'm really taking my time going through this the way I am. And I hope you don't mind that. Just let me know if, I'm taking too long or if I need to switch up. But I want to make sure that I do want to make sure that it's clear, because my goal is to help you all recognize all of these things, because let's face it, with our underlying health conditions, with what's going on in the world today, stress can kill us. Stress is such an integral part of all of those things. And if we can get a handle on the stress response and that overwhelming stress that we feel, we can be healthier, not just physically, we can be healthier emotionally as well as mentally. So I'm going to sign off now. And what we'll do, what we'll do is we will continue with this next week. We'll do a part 4. What is it? No, part 3. Part 3. We'll do part 3 next week, which should finish the series and then we can move on. My plan is to go more in depth into each of these parts so that I'm not just giving you an overview. I can actually give you some applications on what you can do and how you can put some strategies in place that are going to be very, very helpful to you. Thank you so much, Allison. I appreciate it. I appreciate your being here. I appreciate your encouragement. I'm looking forward to seeing you again next week as we finish this series out. I'm Marcelin Bailey. I'm glad you all joined me. Take good care.